Sara, welcome to What Lights Us Up. I'm so excited to have you on.
Thank you so much. I am so excited. You're catching me on a great day. It's good.
Oh, I love that. You're so colorful today for anyone that could see our video. You always talk so much about joy, and that's why I wanted to have you on. You talk so much about joy on Instagram, and you're wearing this bright pink color, and you create artwork that I feel like is super colorful and super inviting, and you just seem like you have such a joyous, positive aura around you. So tell us, how can we invite more joy into our life?
So thank you so much for that. And I have to say that has always been part of my personality is I've always had a positive spin on everything. Um, it's really how my brain is wired. And I think inviting more joy in, first of all, starts with taking care of ourselves and having fun and making everything fun. I don't sacrifice on sleep ever. So that's really hard for a lot of people, but I sleep a lot at night, every night. Actually, I look tired right now, but I did sleep. I think inviting more joy in has to do with also leaning into passion and leaning into what you love in life and doing more of that. And I'm lucky enough that I have turned my passion into my career and my job and my everyday.
Let's dig into that. So, I know I saw a post on social media. You actually went to Syracuse. I went to Syracuse. For everyone listening, we have a lot in common. We also were both in the fashion program. You did fashion design major or fashion merch?
I did fashion design major and then transferred to surface pattern design major, fashion design minor.
Okay, yes. So we both had similar majors. I had fashion design. And I really wanted to, and your whole joyous energy, again, going back to that, like I had been following you since you did your clothing line, your fashion line. And I remember you were doing these painted scarves. And actually, there was an article in our local newspaper in Connecticut because you're from Connecticut. Yes, I think near where I'm from.
Yes, I'm from
Yes.
Connecticut.
And I saw a newspaper articles around the time I published my cookbook. And I, at the same time, was pivoting from fashion into sort of finding this passion for my Italian roots, which was sparked from my cookbook, which created this podcast and literally has given me this whole obsession with my Italian roots and travel experiences in Italy and all of that. And you started in fashion. That was like really your passion, but now you're creating art. You've pivoted. What inspired this journey for you?
So the fashion design journey was my life's dream, going to Syracuse and being in the fashion design program, thinking that I would have my own clothing line. To make that as part of like a quick part of the story, I worked in the fashion industry in New York City for many years. And then I got laid off when my daughter, who's my second child, was a baby. I just actually posted about this on Instagram yesterday because it was her birthday. Um, and I took that as sort of like a sign from the universe. Like I got laid off, I have a baby, we had moved out of New York City and it was time. So I did all of this research, product development, and started a clothing line that was specifically resort wear. But because I have an art background and surface pattern design, prints are my true passion. One of my true passions, I guess I should say. I created my own prints and started off with sarongs for the beach. And I felt like even if you are a doctor who wears scrubs every day to work, even if you're a lawyer who wears black suits every day to work, when you go on vacation, you can wear the most color. And I strongly believe that color makes us happy. Wearing color makes others happy. And this translates also to my current business, which I can talk about, but the ripple effect of positivity. And this is kind of the root of everything that I do. And what brings me so much joy is sharing my positivity with others. And it was through resort wear until I realized that was not for me anymore. I did not enjoy fashion is so intense. It's really you're feeding the consumer, and the way our world and the industry works wasn't really the life I wanted to live, and my mental health was suffering. So I gave that up, and now I focus on art and I create paintings, different scales of paintings. But it's the same concept behind what I'm doing, and that is spreading more positivity and spreading joy. And even if it's just an extra smile that you get out of somebody at the supermarket, then that smile translates to the next person who smiles at the mailman, who then is kinder to their children. And it's really something that our world needs. And there's so much hate and negativity out there if you choose to focus on it. But there's also so much beauty and so many amazing things happening at any given moment that we can focus on.
I love that. I love that you pivoted from saying, I don't, this totally doesn't light me up. It lit me up at one point, but I'm going to take the things that do light me up and I'm going to change and pivot and not be afraid of that. So what was that like for you? What was that pivot like for you? Because at that time you had a family, you were moving or settled in where you were living. I know you live back in the New York area now. Tell us, what was that like for you? And also for someone contemplating a pivot, it's really scary to think, I've gone down this far. Like, why am I going to change at midlife or at a certain age? Name that age. And we could come up with a million reasons of why we were not going to do it.
So it was so challenging. And I would say the top two reasons that it was hard to pivot out of fashion design were one, this was my dream. How could I give up on my dream? I was supposed to be, I was accomplishing something that I had was going to do. I was set out to do. And the fact that I even started my own clothing line was, wow, like I'm doing this. How am I going to give up on it? But the second reason is I also felt like I was going to disappoint the community that I had built. That was my friends, my customers, my clients, everyone who has supported me on my journey up to that point, and it had been about 5 years. The stores, the wholesale stores, the return customers, they were going to be so disappointed in me that I was saying no more, to the point where I almost like hid behind it and didn't really tell anyone and tried to disappear. And my friends convinced me that I should absolutely not do that and I should celebrate what I had created before pivoting. It was very scary. Besides disappointing myself and other people, I also just had to work through a lot of the emotions of feeling like a failure, feeling like I was giving up on something. What if I just pushed a little harder, worked a little harder, spent a little bit more money because it's such an expensive industry? Um, and also trusting in the unknown is really challenging.
You had trusted in the unknown when you went into fashion and did your line because you're like, okay, I got laid off. I was laid off too when I sort of reached this pivot in my own life. I was laid off. I had already done the cookbook. I just started the podcast and I was interviewing all of these people that had started businesses from their passions. And I said, okay, I'm talking to all of these people, all of these guests that I have on this podcast. If they can do it, I can do it too. And one of them inspired me to travel and film video and go back to my roots. I just felt this calling to go back to my roots. I didn't know why. And we can think of a million reasons. I just hosted my first trip in the town of my ancestry in Italy. And honestly, leading up to it, I was like, okay, I sold one. I'm bringing this one guest on this amazing experience. And I'm like, who am I? Who do I think I am? I don't speak the language. Like a million reasons of why, imposter syndrome, right? Of why am I going to keep doing this? This is, and then I go back to, okay, this is what lights me up. This is what gives me a passion. This is what gives me purpose. And maybe I can inspire one person that anything is possible or to find their passion. So it gets hard, I think, to like follow that calling, right?
Yes. It's very hard to follow the calling. What's interesting is that, first of all, your Italy retreat sounds amazing and so cool. We have more to talk about Italy another day because I'm obsessed with Italy. Sometimes I pretend I'm Italian, even though I'm not at all. Um, the, following that unknown when you feel like it's a calling, I've gotten really good at just trusting that it's going to work out. And maybe that is just part of the way my brain is wired. When I started resort wear, leaning into that unknown, I was so head down focused on like checking off my goals. And I got really good at decision making. And it was kind of like, this is not a life or death decision, just make it and move on. And I think because I was so driven, I brought it to life so quickly. And there was like the COVID blip in the beginning, and like I had to pivot a little bit to do tie dye masks out of my backyard and all those things. But each step was a learning experience in how to use email marketing. I didn't even know what marketing was. I went to art school, right?
Right.
But all of it was a lesson. I was so driven. And the unknown of closing the resort wear was so much harder than the unknown of starting it, actually. So, they always say like the grass is always greener on the other side. Like leaning into the unknown of closing it now where I am. So this was like about 18 months ago. Like the grass is so much greener here. And I'm like so thankful that I was so unhappy. So I had to stop. But now I feel like I'm happy in a way that I didn't know that I had lost in the process of doing it. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes, that's incredible. And what do you feel like? Because now you're creating art. So walk us through what your daily sort of art creations look like and what influences that art.
Yeah, amazing. So most of my art is influenced by my Jewish heritage, which really skyrocketed after October 7th and the attack on Israel. Um, I appreciate you having me, like, giving me space to talk about this also. The world is kind of a difficult place right now to be Jewish. And I feel very connected to who I am as a Jewish mom and a Jewish wife. And I'm a Reform Jew. But I believe in tradition. I believe in hosting Rosh Hashanah dinner with 40 people at my house. And I believe in the chaos of family and love and food. And that's part of also why I'm half Italian. um, but my art, actually, I work on creating art with hamsas, and then I overlay Hebrew words on them. So sometimes that they say Lador Vador, which means from generation to generation. Sometimes they say Ahava, which means love. I do a lot of personalized art, so people will approach me and ask to do baby naming gifts or wedding gifts with Hebrew names for people, which I love. And I work with spray paint a lot, and I love spray paint and acrylic. And I have a studio sitting in my one of my studios, but I also have an outdoor studio that I work with. So day to day, I am often wearing clothes that have paint all over them and don't look as clean as I do right now.
I love that. I love that. And I know I saw a mural that you painted for the community for a baseball
Yeah.
stadium or
So I also work on commercial murals. I created a mural on the Little League baseball dugout. So it has like positive baseball quotes from Babe Ruth, stuff like that all around it, baseball gloves. I created a really big, like 25-foot wall mural at a women's workout studio called The Lark. I've created a few murals. I think it was four in the past year. One at a pool. That is a whole other section of my business that I love and is so different. Working for businesses and working large scale. I haven't created a Judaica mural yet, but I would love to. So I'm sure that will happen one day. It's on my wish list, on my manifesting list. Um, but the large scale projects are really cool. That's a whole other thing.
it seems like you create community with those because you're creating connection and everyone can relate to the art, what is that? How does that make you feel? I mean, not only to your roots, because you're expressing, potentially your roots in that art, but you're also creating a community.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I've done a few events and I have a lot more down the pipeline, which is another part of my business where I gather groups of women together and we create art together, or I customize art for people while they hang out. I think overall, we all need community, no matter what your heritage is or where you come from. It's so uplifting to spend the evening with friends and to to actually introduce people to creating art as a way to, have an emotional release, relax. It's almost like a meditation, which is like a whole other thing we could talk about. But creating community around my art is very cool because it's another way to spread joy and positivity.
And open our eyes to different cultures and to learn different cultures and how people express themselves. When LA was going through that whole thing in the spring, and a lot of people were doing graffiti art, and this might be a controversial opinion, but I felt like people are trying to express themselves with the graffiti. Like, I walk around Naples and all of the art is all graffiti on the buildings. And people will walk around and say, well, that's disgusting. It's such a disgusting city. It's so grimy. No, it's actually what makes Naples Naples. It's their expression, it's their culture that's living on the wall, so you can actually see it and feel it as you're walking through the streets. To me, it's an expression of who we are, to share and express in a way that's not verbal, that's visual.
I love that. Yeah. I mean, creating art as an expression is really, I mean, that's like the reason that I do this, right? It's, I was writing some things before this conversation and when you have a craving, like it's like, oh, I just like need to have some chocolate. I have a craving. Making art is kind of like, I couldn't think of the word. It's like a craving, but it's the opposite. Like you crave the release of what it feels like for me to create art. And if there's a time, let's say it's been 2 weeks since I've painted, I will get this feeling, like a physical feeling in my body that is like, if I don't color today, I'm going to explode. And it's almost like that feeling of like, I need chocolate right now. Like, no, I need to make art right now. And it doesn't necessarily associate with like anger or sadness or happiness. It's could be like a really wide range of emotions that makes me feel this. But because making art has become so often in my practice and my life, and I make art like most days of the week, when I don't, I feel different as like a physical human. It's crazy. It's not crazy. It's actually probably scientific.
Okay, but do you know how many people would suppress that and say, I need to make art, but I have X, Y, and Z on my plate to do? I have to take the kids to school. I have this
Mhm.
job that I have to do. I have to pay my bills. I have to X, Y, and Z. And they don't actually go and create the art, and you're actually doing it.
I am. I am. It's amazing. I feel lucky, honestly. And for anyone listening who has kids who wants to express anything of this sort, I highly recommend you take a big box of Crayola markers and stick them on your kitchen table with paper because a lot of mornings at 6 o'clock, I just color at the kitchen table with Crayola markers, and then my kids will just start coloring next to me. And it's just as satisfying and just as much of an emotional release to create like a page of rainbow stars with my daughter as it is to paint. It still is a really, really beautiful way to wake up in the morning.
It's almost like that trick that everyone says, journal in the morning to
Mhm.
help you manifest.
Yeah.
You're actually maybe journaling through your drawing.
Yes. Hmm.
So walk us through how we can, you were touching a little bit about how we can view art and meditate through it and what that can invite in for us. I'm
Yes.
curious to hear your thoughts.
First of all, the act of creating art is a completely different thing than the end result. And it's really creating art without an agenda, creating art without judgment. And it's why, like, a lot of artists will, and teachers, people will say, like, art created by children is so amazing because they don't judge themselves. skin colors need to look this way, leaves don't need to be green. And sitting down and creating art with almost letting your brain really truly relax into a meditative state, um, it's so healthy, and you start to feel like you've meditated. You really can create like a relaxing environment in your brain. I went through, this is a separate thought that relates to what we talked about before. I When I was transitioning from resort wear into my art business, and I was going through a lot of sadness and confusion about my career and my dream, I went to an art therapy workshop for
Oh.
a while. And it was like 6 weeks and then a little break and then 6 weeks. It was probably like 9 months total. And I practiced the art of creating without an agenda, and really like it was like talk therapy while creating artwork. And one of the things that we practiced was using materials that you aren't usually comfortable with. And so you'll understand this being a fashion designer and an artist. Like I always thought I was a 2D artist. I love 2D. I love graphic design. I love computers. I love markers, things that are dry, flat. I hated 3D art in school. I hated construction things. I hated clay. I always hated clay. And then I went to this art therapy workshop and I created 3D art, and I became obsessed with it. Completely caught me off guard. But I was using a hot glue gun and pom poms and feathers and rocks and sticks. And I was building these like crazy, amazing sculptures. And I'm like, who is this person creating this 3D art? But what was really happening is I was completely relaxing and letting go and just like making whatever. And also, you could make a mess and it doesn't matter. It's the act of what's happening in your brain while you are creating the thing. I also want to be an art therapist, sort of one day, maybe. I don't know.
I love that for you. I love that idea.
It's part of the idea trains of what I could do, which would make sense for who I am.
I almost feel like creating art, this is creating art. My podcast is creating art in a different way, right? Than actually physically creating something you can see. We're creating something that someone can listen to. It's meditative. It connects me to people. It inspires me to follow what lights me up. So I do feel like art does help us find what lights us up because it quiets our mind into being in a present moment and saying, okay, what am I enjoying about this experience? How does my body feel? What did I like about this experience? What do I want to do more of? And what do I want to do less of? And so I think every time that we create something, even if it's honestly, everyone's an artist. They're creating social media posts and you're taking photos of your kids and you're decorating a table at your Sunday dinner. Everyone is an artist in their own way, and everyone can find that little passion in their everyday life. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that and how people can find more of what lights them up.
I love that. And I just want to touch on one thing that you said that is really important, is that it gives you a chance to be present and be where you are physically, so that like mentally you are also where you are, instead of worrying about the to-do lists and all the other things and the stuff that we have going on because life is so busy, or scrolling, or all the other nonsense. And creating art really gives you the chance to be where you are, because when you're using your hands also, you're focused on where you are, and that's like something to think about that I love about it.
Yes, I agree with the presence. And I even have presence when I edit the podcast. So not only when I am having a conversation and trying to be present with my guests, but then I'm editing. And I actually love the editing part of it because I can meditate into it and focus, and it's a project and I know when I'm done. And so that's very meditative for me too. In creating the artwork, whatever it is, whether it's a dinner table, a meal, a photo, a travel experience, a piece of art, a voice memo to a friend, how do you think it can help us find or follow more of what lights us up? Because I think we're all searching for that. We all want to be you, right? That's why I have you on this podcast. We all want to be you who is creating art for our life. And how can we do more of that? I'm just curious to hear your thoughts.
Well, first of all, it's so much is about being grateful for what we have. And creating more will help us with what we want because it brings in more joy. And I think what I really learned in the past year that is hard to accept and trust at first, but I leaned in hard to it, is that the more we do that brings us joy, the more the universe will reward us with what we want. And to bring in pleasure and have fun and be present in these joyful moments, whether it's creating art, baking, cooking, editing, the things we love, you're you're present in the happiness. And then in that, you're rewarded. I think what happened to me in the past year is I let myself have fun. And when I was creating resort wear, I was stressed all the time. And I let myself change into a different type of person than I thought I was supposed to be, also. Fitting into a mold of working all the time. And now I don't work all the time. And it's almost like it's hard to admit that to some people. Like, of course I should be working all the time. But actually, no, I shouldn't be working all the time. I should be enjoying myself. I play tennis. It's fun. It's healthy. I'm present. And therefore, the fun brings in a good mood, a healthy mom, a patient person in the evenings when everything's chaotic. And therefore, there's more love, less fighting. And therefore, we all sleep better. And therefore, I work harder and paint more the next day. And it's all goes together. I mean, and also we could say it goes back to self care.
We have to choose that, which I think is really challenging for a lot of people, especially even me. It's hard to choose the, I feel like, so for example, I was in Italy for 6 weeks, which was crazy insane, going back to like, right, crazy insane. And I felt guilty like every day. I was like, okay, I'm going to check my email because I was working remote. And then I would enjoy the day, but I would feel guilty. What emails have come in? What issues have come in? Should I, I feel guilty for enjoying my time and then I would come back, I'd check in again and I'd go to dinner. And then I would feel guilty about having a glass of wine and enjoying myself because I have to go back and check my email before I go to bed. Like it's an endless cycle of that guilt, that like but I know that work-life balance, I came back here. I just came back and I said, I love the work-life balance. That was the most incredible part of the trip because it was actually calmer and I was actually able to tackle a problem. I was like, okay, everything's solvable. Let's just be calm about it. Everything is solvable. I mean, fashion is
The fashion
crazy.
emergency.
Fashion emergency is, we're not saving lives here, but it's always an emergency. So it's, it's challenging when you work and you're used to that constant, and then you can't change other people though. And that's a challenging thing. So you have to try to change yourself and hope that others around you will adapt to that.
It's also a hard thing to do when you love what you do. Like, and I really had this different versions of working for myself. I've loved what I've done. I love working because it's creative work. So I love that I like want to wake up and like go to my computer at 5 a.m. and talk to my factory and all these things, even if it's not a healthy lifestyle. So I shouldn't be doing it, but it's also my dream. I love it. And so it's choosing the healthier thing, even though you love the unhealthy thing.
Right.
It's not like, oh, I hate work. I have to go work. No, it's like, oh, I love work. I got to go work. But no, how about my husband said to me the other day, like, oh, are we back to like, he said something like, are we back to being scrolling Instagram on Saturdays for work? I thought we were done with that phase. And I was like, oh, shoot, I got to get off. Like, because there's phases where it's really busy and I have to, like, do all the things I'm supposed to do. But it's a reminder to go back and choose the healthier version. I mean, Italy sounds amazing.
It was honestly, I and a few people had said, "I'm so proud of you." I'm proud of myself for actually going for 6 weeks.
Yes. It's so amazing. 6 weeks. I lived there in college. Did you go abroad? Did you go there?
London, I was in London.
Okay, I was in Florence and I
You were
lived
in
with a
Florence.
host mom and she cooked for me and I would write the recipes down at dinner and I lived with a roommate and we had bicycles and we would ride to school. There was a factory, a Roberto Cavalli factory, and they would give us their leather scraps and I found an industrial sewing machine and I would make all these leather clutches. I was like sewing in this like attic of this design studio because Syracuse had a design program in Florence. So I made all these clutches and I did felting. I made the coolest, I had the coolest fashion design semester. And then we would go to lunch and drink like a liter of wine, then go shopping and ride home on our bicycles with shopping bags on the bike handles. Like it was ridiculous.
How
It
fun.
was amazing.
I bet Florence has changed a little bit. I went to the leather school, actually. The leather school in Piazza San Croce. There's I forget what it's the specific La Scuola di Cuo.
I don't know it, but I know what you're
It's
talking about.
You could see the artisans sewing the bags,
That's so
and
cool.
then on the top level they sell all of the bags, and then you can get um they include the engraving or the monogram for free with your purchase, and you can get wallets, purses, jackets, and it's a chance to get a very authentic leather piece in Florence versus the random street
Yeah.
vendors that are out and about.
Yeah.
But I found Florence, it actually was my first time really staying and immersing myself in Florence and also Naples. So I saw the two polarities, which was interesting. And Florence and Naples are very different. I mean, obviously, besides like the art, how they express themselves, right? Going back to that. But Naples is obviously all about their food and their culture, and they're like, we're Neapolitan and we're, pizza, and we're full of, energy and soccer and all of these, really, we're gonna scream at our moms outside the front door, and the nonnas are gonna sit out their door in the street and watch everybody go by. In Florence it's very more sophisticated. Everybody is uh eating steak. In Naples, everybody's eating fried food. They're like, we don't
That's
care. We're eating fried food and pasta. And in Florence, you're like, okay, we're going to eat steak and truffles. And we've not graduated to the wine, but it became very touristy in Florence.
interesting.
And
Okay.
no one's in Naples.
Wow.
No one's in Naples.
Okay.
I'm like walking around, I'm like, Florence, people are hitting me with flags and cameras in the face, even at the museum. You go to Naples, there's nobody there.
Why?
People are afraid to go to Naples, I think.
Yeah.
They're
It
afraid
makes
to
me want
go.
to
They're afraid to go. They think it's dangerous.
That's sad.
Florence has created this. They're seating Florentines and English speaking tourists in different rooms and restaurants. So
I
you will go
remember
in.
there was one experience we had at a dinner. I mean, this was so long ago, but they put us like in a different section
Different
because,
section.
yeah.
I asked at one restaurant because I was the only other patron there besides a group table, and I said, "No, I want to sit in that room." And I didn't know it was the owner and their friends.
Oh,
And it made the whole experience I sat at this the server didn't even have room to move to, like, deliver me food. I just sat where they could just drop it to my table, and because I didn't wanna sit in a room by myself. I was by
Yeah.
myself. So I sat there and they just delivered, and then at the end, they actually asked me to join them and ask my story, and because I was trying to speak Italian, so I was showing
Yeah.
them that, I'm not just a tourist sitting here. But yeah, I mean, let's touch on the on your roots part, because let's go back to, like, Italy and, yeah, and your Jewish roots. And I think traveling there really connects me to my roots, but also I think the start of my connection to my roots was really my cookbook and my obsession and passion for food stories and the food of my culture. And like you were saying, you love the Italian culture because of the food. Everyone loves the Italian culture because of the food. That is our culture. That is our culture. It's who we are. And it's what we remember, I think, most about Italy is remember the food experiences. And I'm so passionate about that. And so as I create these videos of cooking experiences and travel experiences in Italy, it's like I don't want to just create it and then share it. It's like, okay, this is just a video I'm creating, but it's actually bringing me joy to share it and say, look at the real Italy. Come and experience real, authentic Italy. See it beyond the tourism sites.
There's
How
so much
has
passion. There's so much passion in how you explain it that it's like a feeling that I'm getting. It's awesome.
I get upset when people go and they just want to stand in line for the Duomo all day. I saw the line at the Duomo in Florence, and I literally I was like, I can't believe. I took a picture of the crowd, and I'm like, I cannot believe this crowd. There is more. I understand that you came there and you really want to see it, but you're going to stand in line for 4 hours to go up to take a picture of a view of Florence when you could have eaten an amazing lunch, gone to, walked around the city, saw the site. I mean, it's really frustrating. It's
Yes.
really frustrating to see because you're not experiencing the culture that
Right.
way.
Right. Absolutely.
You know? What for your own culture, you talked a little bit about your art connecting you to your roots and inspired by your roots, but how has it connected you deeper to your own heritage?
So I would say one way is that I'm learning more Hebrew. I don't read Hebrew or speak Hebrew, but I'm learning to create art with Hebrew, which is really cool. And it's giving me something that I like want to call my grandma and tell her that I'm proud of, to be honest with you, because I'm making something that feels important. And especially right now, even more important. It's always been important, but it feels like it's connecting me in a new way. It's connecting me to a Jewish community in a new way. I'm meeting new Jewish friends, new Jewish community members. I feel more connected actually to my synagogue. I'm on the board of our Hanukkah bazaar, so I'm helping to create a Hanukkah event. And using my art feels like a new way to connect and spread Jewish positivity with the community at a time when the world needs it. And I feel I've always been proud to be Jewish. I had a bat mitzvah. I've been to, my husband's Jewish. We had a bris and a baby naming for our kids. I've been to Israel 2 times on birthright, and then also with my grandpa and my parents, aunts, uncles, and all my cousins. And I was actually just pregnant. Like nobody knew I was pregnant when I was there, which was really cool. And we went in the Dead Sea, and you put like mud all over you, and I remember doing like a heart on my belly, which probably like everybody knew what I was doing, but I thought I was being quiet about it. And I hope to go back to Israel one day. And my kids, I'm proud to raise them as Jewish. We celebrate Shabbat every Friday, and we do it our own way. We have challah and sushi, and we light the candles. And it also has a lot to do with tradition and creating your own traditions, as part of, I'm proud Jewish mom, proud Jewish wife, proud Jewish daughter and granddaughter, and all of those things. Rosh Hashanah is now my holiday. I get to host it how I want to host it, which is so much fun. And yeah, the art has been another way that I've been able to connect to the Jewish community and feel really proud to be Jewish. And also, something different. The art I create is different. It's not very traditional. So it's modern Jewish art that is fun and playful and colorful and bold and not necessarily Jewish art like you have seen before.
It's so true. It's creating our art really does connect, I think, both of us to our heritage. And I'd like to think it helps at least me preserve tradition, like you talked about, tradition in our culture, because I'm afraid of that going away as, generations get more advanced and they move away from where they grew up. I mean, I don't live where I grew up. And so there's this connection I think that our generation is wanting to feel back to our roots. And I think art allows us to create that connection with people, not only with our own roots, but I think across cultures, which I think the world needs more of.
Yes. And I totally agree with that. And another way is it's like a conversation starter, whether it's a pasta dish or a painting on the wall, you're inviting somebody in to open up the conversation about what you have created. And that's a way, even here, where you're asking me about my heritage, I'm learning about your heritage through a podcast that is, it's so interesting. And then if we were in person and you shared a beautiful Italian dish with me, we would start talking about it. If you came to my house, or you can see some of the artwork literally behind me in the podcast screen, you say, like, what is that? What does that mean? And it's a conversation starter, which opens the doors to understanding cultures different than your own, also. So, yes, it connects me with the Jewish community, but the hope also is that it connects me with other people too, and allows me to explain who I am and where I come from.
Yes, yes, totally. So I hope that everyone goes out and creates some artwork to connect to other people, to open their eyes, to understand other cultures, and to find what lights them up.
I hope so too. It's healthy.
So tell us where we can find you, follow you, support your artwork.
Amazing. Okay. So my Instagram is shop Sara Joy, ShopSaraJoy. My business and my brand is called Sara Joy, and my website is also Shop Sara Joy. So Joy is my middle name. I always say thanks to my parents. So it's a good one.
It's why I wanted to have you on this podcast because it's like joy is everywhere. You're in your name, in your Instagram handle, in the way you carry yourself, in your artwork. It's just like so joyous. So go check her out on
Thank you.
Instagram. She's so joyous and so happy feeling. And thank you for bringing your positivity today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. This is really fun.
Thanks for coming on.